If everybody get a spot, we'll get our meeting started. We'll go ahead and call the meeting in order and have roll calls.
Mr. Alexander?
Here.
Mr. Bartlett?
Here.
Mr. Burkus? Dr. Brumley, proxy, Dr. Gray?
Here.
Dr. Coker?
Here.
Mr. Dozak?
Here.
Mr. DeVilliers?
Here.
Dr. Ebar has a proxy, Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Fultz?
Here.
Dr. Fountain?
Here.
Dr. Goree?
Here.
Mr. Dalcrown?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Dr. Joseph is excused. Miss Laviolette? Not in attendance. Dr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Powell? Mr. Strong?
Here.
Ms. Tanner?
Here.
Mr. Watts?
Here.
And Mr. Williams?
Here.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to recognize our Bessie members that are here, Ms. Doris O'Shea, Mr. Ronnie Morris, and Ms. Ashley Ellis. Thank y'all for attending. I'd also like to recognize Representative Garofalo from, who's going to be the ISED chairman this year. Appreciate you coming. At this time, I need a motion for the approval of the minutes from the last September.
So moved. Second.
Coker and yeah.
Someone else start too. Anybody opposed? Okay, passes. This time we'll conduct our new business. First item on the agenda is the consideration of an update regarding LHSAA academic credit requirements. I need a motion to receive that.
So moved. Second.
So I got to proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Members of the group superintendents, thank you for being here. I'm going to pass the bulk of the comments today to Ken Bradford because every item on our side of this is in Ken's wheelhouse. Let me just give a brief overview if I may. First, I should say that this meeting at 11 o'clock, if you wish to join, will be followed by a discussion of rural finance issues. No compulsion to stay, but if you're interested, we have a number of districts that we're concerned, in particular in the northeast of our state, are being presented with very challenging enrollment circumstances and economic circumstances that it's not an immediate issue as much as it's a long-term issue, but there are some immediate consequences for some districts. And so at 11 o'clock, we want to talk a little bit about this issue. I know some of our Bessie members and Representative Garofalo, I of course invite you to join and hope that you will as well. Second, at 1 p.m. there is the MFP task force, which Ms. Davis and I will be chairing, or will be coordinating. The chairman today will be Bessie member Jim Garvey, who's standing in for Tony Davis, who's unavailable. As you know, that's just a general discussion of the formula for this upcoming year, but it is the only task force discussion. We waited until the executive budget was introduced. That is at 1 p.m. And so if you wish to join for that, that's a public meeting as well. So I invite everybody, of course, to stay for as many of those meetings as you feel interested in. The items today all touch on high school policy, and for the most part, they are very narrow and very detailed, but they touch on important dimensions of this. First, we do have an update on policy related to LHSAA. Assistant Superintendent Bradford is my designee to LHSAA, and we thought it'd be a helpful thing to begin to bring this into our discussion, as obviously all of you are instrumental in that dialogue. Second, we're going to be talking about a couple of policies that relate to the integrity of diplomas, wanting to tighten up any hole in the dike, so to speak, that may exist within our diploma structure. Just very operational, very technical issues, just to make sure that when students graduate, we can be 100% confident they're graduating with validity and with integrity. And finally, we'll talk about Jumpstart. This has been a much longer process in the making. It's not an accountability or credentials discussion, though the Workforce Commission is having that discussion. This is a discussion about courses that you take in order to obtain the credentials. And the sequence of courses called Pathways, and we'd like to present that to you as well. The LHSAA item is not an item that's going to be up for a vote. at Bessie. This is an LHSAA issue, and we're in dialogue with you. The other items are items that we're bringing to Bessie for their consideration. I appreciate the chance, Mr. Chairman, and Ken, I'll pass it to you.
All right, good morning. As John stated, in April, Dana Peterson, who had been our representative on the LHSAA Executive Committee, he turned off after a 6-year term. John appointed me and asked me if I'd be interested in it, and spoke with many of y'all. I taught and coached here in Baton Rouge for 7 years at Estrema High School, so I had an interest in doing this. The first meeting that I attended was in April when I came on the committee. And there was a student athlete that came in for, had a hardship appeals. And what he was appealing to become eligible for his athletics was that he had been double blocked in an auto body course in the afternoon, block 3 and block 4. And there was one course title for that, auto body, but he was getting 2 Carnegie credits. The LHSAA Constitution recognized course titles. So they were seeing this as, you took 1 course in the spring, in the fall, you took 1 course in auto body. He had actually taken 2. So as this transpired in the appeals, I was asking, and what came to fruition was they were not recognizing multi-credit courses for student eligibility. They were having to come to the appeals committee. This young athlete had sat out a few weeks until the appeal. So when they were assigning me to a committee, I asked if I could be on the Rules and Handbook Committee. Fast forward to January 28th, when the whole General Assembly of 300+ principals came to do their annual voting. Myself, along with John Gillette in the back, who's your superintendent's representative, and Jerry Pickman, who's the School Boards Association representative, we brought forward the proposal to the General Assembly, and it needed a 2/3 majority vote in order to change the Constitution and the bylaws of the LHSAA, and it resoundingly passed by 310 to 4. So effective July 1, moving forward, relative to the LHSAA, the language has been cleaned up so that it will fully recognize dual enrollment courses, as well as multi-credit courses that students are taking in high school that will no longer have to go through a hardship appeals process. Any questions or comments? Just wanted to share to let you know that is transparent.
Any discussion?
We have a motion.
All right, we need a vote to go ahead and accept the recommendation.
Is anybody opposed?
Is anybody opposed? Motion passes. All right, our next item to consider is revisions to Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook of School Administrators regarding credit recovery and scheduling. I need a motion to receive this. Second.
Okay, give you historical context on this policy. Currently, within Bulletin 741, there is a subsection that outlines the policies related to credit recovery. It came to my attention in the fall after we had done some transcript audits in school systems, and then the multiple questions that I kept getting around credit recovery, that our policy for credit recovery, it needed clarity, it needed to come into alignment with best practices for credit recovery, and we need to be ensuring that these credits were being appropriately transcribed. So I met with Superintendent Strong, Superintendent Falk, and I told them, I said, look, I'm getting lots of questions around credit recovery, and I think we need to get some clarity in policy and establish, the best practices in policy. So I met with Superintendent Falk, I met with Superintendent Strong, Superintendent DeVilliers, Superintendent Coker, a bunch of us, we met, and they said, look, Superintendent Alexander, they said, look, we agree, there needs to be more clarity around credit recovery. Also, we need to ensure that there are checks and balances in the system so that we can check for the integrity of that. Thus, if there are just a significant or an abundance amount of credit recovery credits applied towards graduation, that we have a way to check on that and ensure. So I'm going to walk through each of these bullets. And basically, what we're proposing to bring to Bessie on March 10th is take the existing credit recovery policy in Bulletin 741 and just strike through it and come back with these bullets. And so I'll walk through each of the bullets and then I'll just open it up for questions and comment. The first one is the school system credit recovery program and policy shall be included in the local pupil progression plan. And what we want to do is within the pupil progression plan, provide you, the school system, a template that you can fill out and put the credit recovery policy in it. Also, it's come to our attention that there are some credit recovery things that have to be in place at the local school system for the NCAA to recognize the student athletes. And the NCAA also says that you will have a local policy around credit recovery and the issuing of those credits for student eligibility. So this will cover that. We take the credit recovery policy that's going to be, we're proposing, and we put that as part of the pupil progression plan, and then also put in the pupil progression plan the language and the things that you need around student eligibility for the NCAA. That will eliminate that problem. The second thing is the number of credits that are accumulated. And what we're proposing here is a maximum of seven credit recovery units to be applied towards the graduation requirements, and no more than 2 credits earned annually through credit recovery. And if a school system does go beyond that threshold, much like we do right now for the transitional 9th grade, we're asking that that be reported to the state with rationale. So if I'm a school system and I did 2 credit recovery courses in the summer, and then over the Christmas break, perhaps a student went in and attempted another 1 or 2 credits through credit recovery over the break. If they went over that threshold, the school system, when they report to us their rationale for any overages on transitional 9th grade, they also have the opportunity here to report the rationale for the overages. The third bullet is students in credit recovery must have previously taken and failed the course, and all attempts are considered an academic record which must be documented on the official transcript. So currently, the policy does say that the student has had to have taken the course and failed the course to be enrolled into a credit recovery course. It's been unclear about, does that go on the transcript? And the answer is yes, that is an academic record, and it does go on the student's transcript. Those 7,800 instructional minutes didn't just disappear from the students that had a failed course account. So this clarifies that the credit goes on the high school transcript. Then when the course is taken for credit recovery, it's labeled as such on the transcript. And again, this is currently in practice, but it's not being implemented. And so we want to just provide real clarity in policy. And so if I took my U.S. history course as a second time for credit recovery, there's a prefix that's used for that in the system that the data manager will share with you. Look, just make sure we're using the prefix for credit recovery. When there's when there is a diploma review, we can see you failed U.S. history. Now we see there was a credit recovery attempt for U.S. history on the transcript. Again, these are also NCAA requirements that they both be on the transcript. So it's bringing us into alignment. Next one is students are not required to meet instructional minute requirements. We just want to be real clear with that. Currently, the policy requires 7,800 instructional minutes for a Carnegie credit. That's not the case for credit recovery courses. The third to the last, credit recovery courses must be aligned to the state content standards and have an aligned pre-test to identify areas of non-proficiency and a post-test to demonstrate proficiency in the content where they weren't proficient. So Mr. Alexander pointed this out, we need to get this in policy. If I go and do my credit recovery U.S. history, I should do my pre-assessment and determine where I'm deficient. And the areas that I'm deficient, that's where I should do my credit recovery work, and that's where I should take my exam. Right now, there's nothing in policy about pre-assessments and post-assessments. It's hodgepodge. Sometimes there's credit, sometimes there is pre-assessments and credit recovery courses, sometimes there is. This brings clarity to that. Second to last one, online credit recovery courses must have an assigned Louisiana teacher of record. The current policy says it references having a facilitator of instruction, a certified teacher that facilitates. When we've reviewed some credit recovery course offerings that have been applied, who is the teacher of record? Well, they're the facilitator, they're not really the teacher. So somebody is accountable for those students. If your school is offering credit recovery, you still might have three different courses going on, but there is a teacher of record that is assigned to those students to ensure that they're there and they're accountable for the students doing the coursework. And the last one is in policy. This is just saying the end of course exam weights are the same and the student can retain a previous score in lieu of retaking the exam. So if you did U.S. history class and you were not successful and you failed, but you did have a successful score in the EOC, you don't have to take the EOC again when you do it for credit recovery. And last is about getting the credits onto the transcript. And beginning with the 2020-2021 school year, what this would do is require, as part of the graduation plan, prior to awarding that student his or her diploma, ensuring that their academic records have been uploaded into the state student transcript system. And the problem this is solving for is a school system issuing a student a diploma, sometime in the future, uploading the student's academic records, and then a flag going off in the system and saying, wait, this student took a course that actually didn't count for graduation. So it's providing us that, getting the academic record into the state student transcript system prior to awarding of a diploma. And again, these are policies that we are proposing that would go into place for 2020, 2021. So again, this, it's this part down here, like the scheduling, getting them in, this would be for the spring of 2021 prior to graduation, making sure those seniors had their academic records.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions?
I had a couple. The one you just mentioned, it goes to the policy.
Use your mic if you can, though.
Oh,
This is big time, so.
is this bad? So what you just mentioned, I'm sorry?
We're recording, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I like it.
That's why we need you.
So the one you just mentioned, 2020, 2021,
Yeah.
we have some of this already going on, so there'll have to be some
Yeah,
guidance.
there would, I would
How
say
we
this.
transition to this?
Let's say, yeah, I would say this. If you have right now, let's say a sophomore, and he or she has a significant amount of credit recovery, may have been earned in the summer, may have been earned in alternative incentive. When they get to the senior year, they may, which will be 2021 or thereafter, they may have accumulated those credits even before the policy, but because they had such an abundance over 7, you would still just report to us and say, look, the student did the credit recovery, in this year, and they've accumulated them through our credit recovery program, et cetera.
Okay, so it would be retro for all, for everybody.
It's based on the graduating class. For 2021, if any student had a maximum of 7 credit recovery courses applied to the transcript to meet graduation requirements, the school system would share the rationale for that and report it to the department.
Okay, and so, you gave an example about summertime, because it's like 2 annual is your mark. You gave an example of summertime and then Christmas. So, where does summer belong? How do we connect summer and Christmas? What is annually? How will we define annually?
Yeah, we'll try to align it with the cohort. So the cohort, a senior cohort, for the purposes of counting for graduation, having their IBCs count in strength of diploma, goes through August 31st. So we would say if you have a senior that has attained his or her credits through August 31st, and then they're deemed the graduate. That's where we would want that identified. August 31st is our marker where we have.
I'm not real sure I still understand your explanation. So if I'm a freshman, I finish my freshman year, I need to go to credit recovery for 2 courses between my freshman and my sophomore year, and I do. And then I'm on a block schedule. So I fail a course, and I'm offered credit recovery at Christmas time, Christmas break, my second year of high school. Am I in a new year annually yet?
The cycle is this: fall, spring, summer. That's a cycle. Fall, spring, summer. That's a cycle.
So if I do something at Christmas, that impacts the following summer.
Yes, correct.
That's clear. And then the last thing I had, and this is just, just trying to clear it up in my own mind. When it's reported, is there a particular way that we'll report it? Or is there going to be some clarity and definition?
So it's, yes. Let's use an example. Currently, if a school system offers dual enrollment welding from an LCTCS campus, that welding has a 6-digit course code. And because it's dual enrollment, there's a prefix that the school system uses for that welding dual enrollment. And so it's similar in this concept. There's a credit recovery prefix. So we would see U.S. history, it'll have the 6-digit course code for U.S. history, but it'll have a credit recovery prefix on it.
I'm sorry, I want to repeat with my question.
Okay.
It's the rationale piece that I'm asking.
Okay.
So is there a form or something that we would submit? Would it just be a letter?
Oh, yes, we would have a form similar to what we do for transitional actors. We'll have a template for you. Yeah.
I'll have a microphone, Dr. Gorey likes having 2.
He's got to use a mic.
Yeah, that's my job. Is there a chance that you guys don't agree with our rationale and say are we waiting on approval, or we can send the rationale and say we wanted to do
Yeah, it's just like transitional language. You send in the rationale, we review it. If it makes sense, do it. If there's questions about it, then we will ask the school system about it. So to give you an example, if we received rationale that there was a student in his senior year that received 21 credit recovery credits, we would follow up with the school district because we would want to know how that was accomplished.
Another, just stay on this point. Clearly, the purpose of this is to help kids, in the best sense of it, is to help kids who have been out of school or have really had problems. We're not trying to stand in the way of that. One thing that this would prevent is, we had a school recently where like 2/3 of the school, 2/3 of the graduating class had the majority of their credits through some sort of credit recovery system, something along those lines. This type of thing would create a dialogue about that type of situation. So it's not just the individual student, but the volume of students that are going from an individual school.
It's my understanding that we would have to establish whether a student using a pretest, if they have areas of deficiency or what, identify the areas of deficiency. And then after they complete the course, they would have to give a post-test to identify areas of proficiency. Okay. Will the state, is this a locally constructed test, and how does that maintain?
Yes, they are. Yes, those are locally constructed tests. And so we talked some about this.
Right.
There are some school systems that are still doing credit recovery with a face-to-face teacher, like it's just face-to-face instruction, and then some of it is the online learning platforms or things that do it. Yeah, but it would be both, no matter whatever your modality is for taking the credit recovery course. There would be a pre-assessment and a post-assessment, and what it's really trying to accomplish is the student working on the work where they're just deficient in lieu of doing the whole course over.
Another question. We're not changing a lot of the policy that we've used in the past year that I see, other than maybe the maximum of 2 courses annually and a maximum of 7 over high school career.
Yeah, I would say that, yes, but I would say that right now there is, that is new. I would say that it's bringing clarity to putting it on the transcript, so it's not an assumed thing. So that will be in policy. Most of the school systems are already doing that, but it's clarifying it in policy. The instructional minutes is already in policy. It's not in policy about using pre-assessments and post-assessments. So, but that's a new piece to the policy. And then we've changed the language from facilitator to teacher or partner. So there is somebody accountable for the students.
Y'all need to remember, some of these kids had 23 credits in credit recovery out of 24 graduated. That's a lot of credits to fail and repeat, and just the sheer mass of taking 23 credit recovery. Somewhere in there's got to be some accountability. And the NCAA piece of this is very important, because I almost had a kid lose a big time scholarship in Kansas on this same thing, and that was several of ours. As we met, we talked about that, because not a lot of these districts have a lot of kids going to the NCAA, but when you do have one, this credit recovery piece can penalize that kid. And you don't think about it until he's a senior and he's got his offer and there he goes. And I think I've talked to several other superintendents about this, and I think all our districts have this problem. All this is basically putting the guidelines on it and some best practices that we can use. It's not changing the whole big game of this, other than some kids will get this credit in 5 hours, and that's just too quick. I mean, you're getting a whole credit, and you're putting in 5-6 hours of work, and getting 23 credits. That's an abuse, in my opinion. So, and I appreciate Ken sitting down with us, getting our perspective on this prior to this meeting. So, thank you, Ken, for the work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this is going to be good and clarify some things. I did have just one question though. 2 a year, but only 7 total. The math.
That's that.
So those, the math, you get. Just clarify.
Originally, we were saying 8. Let's have 8, and then I think somebody had suggested, let's put it at 7. Yes, and it was 7. 7 was the right.
2 a year. If you did 2 a year, total thing. Yeah, that was just a question on the rationale behind that, and that's not the big deal. But if I do 2 a year, and somebody goes to, well, I did 2 a year, but I got 8, I mean, so.
It's the difference between an average of 2 per year versus just 2 per year.
Right, the most you can get is 2 a year, I get that.
Yeah,
I mean,
correct.
I mean, not maximum.
Correct.
Okay, so everybody, we're good with that then.
I just want to say, I spoke to another superintendent about this matter, and, you know, in some districts, they may have a district policy that they don't allow credit recovery in the junior and senior year. Well, they may be over 2 in a year, but the issue is just reporting that rationale. And that's all it is. So it's not limiting you, really. It's a guideline. And so if there is a situation, it's just reporting to you guys as a heads up. And so I think it's eliminating abuse, so I appreciate this new policy.
Okay.
So the pretest, that's locally designed, you said, right? And if it were, say, an end of course test, we could actually use that. Pretest is really already been given to identify proficiency. So it's really what we do locally to determine that credit recovery and the grade, however we do. There's no guidance in policy around the grade that's assigned or anything like that. It's
Just saying standards in line.
we just need to be sure that we are remediating the gaps that exist, rather than just going back through the course.
Yes.
We could be going back through the
It's
course.
trying to eliminate going back through the whole course, identifying where your gaps are, and then addressing those gaps.
But there is no direct guidance about the pretest or even post-test.
All we're saying is that the only thing that's going to be in policy says that pre-assessment aligned to state standards, a
And
post-assessment.
most of our online platforms.
Yes,
already
they
have.
do. Yes. The ones that we've been working with.
Any other questions? Is there any opposition? Okay. Recommendation passes. All right, our next item of business is consideration of updates regarding proposed Jumpstart 2.0 pathways. I need a motion to consider this.
Motion.
Second. All right,
Okay. Jumpstart 2.0. We received lots of feedback from schools. We've received lots of feedback. I want to give a little set the stage for the historical context of this. And in 2014, the new Jumpstart Career Diploma came into existence. And what it was trying to solve for was the career diploma we had in place before that. It was legislated that any student in 8th grade who was not proficient would by default go on the career diploma. It had a stamp. And number two, the other thing that it also did was it had, you took just this 6 courses, some type of courses in area of concentration, with no real kind of alignment to a pathway and a terminal credential. So we did a lot with Jumpstart 1.0. And what has happened since 2014, we now have over 40 technical pathways. There's a pathway for certified nursing. You know, there's another pathway for a medical assistant. There's a dental pathway. There's multiple pathways. We're over 40. It's become very complex for your school counselors. It's just like reading a dissertation trying to figure out one pathway. So for the last 2 years, we have been reviewing the pathways. We've been looking at the data from that first graduating cohort. And what it showed was 60% of our Jumpstart graduates, of the 8,000, we've got 25% of our kids now graduating on a Jumpstart diploma, up from 2%. We're at 25%. They're all getting their credentials. 60% of them are state paid. And a lot of it is because we've got just misalignment on courses. And so the ask, when we came back to the board last January with a blueprint, the ask was to do multiple things to refresh Jumpstart. I'll give you a couple of examples that the wheels were already in motion on. One was to do something about the stigmatized of it relative to Student of the Year. Every year we have a Student of the Year competition. And typically, it's a student that has scored 34 plus on the ACT, has 6 AP courses of 5, and is national data. So this year, coming into this year, as a result last February, we revised our rubric for Student of the Year. We recognized paid internships in Student of the Year. We recognized FFA participation in Student of the Year. We recognize, just like you may have a National Merit Scholar, we recognize Skills USA scholars, students that go and practice their craft and get a National Skills USA recognition award. Attainment of IBCs is on par with attainment of advanced placement and dual enrollment. Yesterday, I was talking to the team here that was around the state and the region. So now in the Student of the Year competition, we've gone from the local school level, they've sent them to the region, and they're doing the regional Students of the Year. And I was told yesterday that for the first time around, we have Jumpstart students that have made it to the regional Student of the Year based on their athletes. So that's one thing that we've done with Jumpstart 2.0. The other thing is aligning it with Carl Perkins. And there's federally reauthorized Carl Perkins, the federal CTE, they have them in clusters. And so the ask that we got from the field was, we need to get our Jumpstart pathways. One, we need to streamline them, and two, we need to align them with Carl Perkins. And so the proposal that's coming forth to Bessie is going to be to take these 40 plus technical pathways that are in existence and consolidate them into 11 pathways aligned with the federal Carl Perkins clusters. The other thing that we have done since last spring is now we have aligned Jumpstart regional teams with Carl Perkins regional teams. Every Carl Perkins regional meeting now, that happen quarterly, they have a standing item for Jumpstart. Because what we were hearing was our CTE supervisors, today they're going to the Jumpstart meeting, and then on next Wednesday, they're going to a Carl Perkins meeting. They're all going and they're talking about CTE, and they're all trying to do the same thing to get all of their programs aligned through K-20 with Carl Perkins to get these programs of study aligned. We have literally spent the last 8 months in the field, CTE supervisors, business and industry, post-secondary, school system leaders. All of that culminated with January 28th at the Jumpstart Convention, where we had 1,400 people there. And we shared, in the afternoon, we had breakout sessions on each of these new proposed pathways. And it was a January 28th of, this is where we are at this moment in time. We have heard that in health sciences, hey, phlebotomy, there's a credential for that, it's not in the pathway. It's been recognized by WIP. EKG, it's been recognized by WIP. We need that in the pathway. And so we've embedded them in there. And then we shared on January 28th at the convention, we said, this is where we are relative to the courses. As an example, in the IT pathway, we shared and we said, look, here's the 30 courses that we've heard need to be in the pathway. What else are we missing? If we're missing something, send it to us. Jumpstart@la.gov. Also coming out of the convention, what we heard was, Ken, we got freshmen coming on campus in 6 months. And those freshmen are going, I can't adjust my scheduling this quick. And we need some more transition time. We need time for our counselors to digest this. We need more time for our CTE supervisors to dig in on this. Why don't you give us a transition year? So what we're going to propose is that for this year, for the incoming freshman cohort, they have an option. You can use one of the existing Jumpstart 1.0 40 pathways for 1 more year, or you can be an early adopter and start using 2.0 pathways, or somewhere in the middle. Both will be eligible and available for the incoming freshman cohort. And then the thing that I've heard the most feedback, you've probably heard the most feedback, I'm going to ask Jessica, we put this in the superintendent's newsletter, is universal courses. So this is how a pathway is configured. It's 9 courses. 9 courses that are concentrated in, like, health science. You pick 9 from the bucket and get your credential. But we also have what we call universal courses. Can you name up universal courses? Now, this was in the superintendent's newsletter. Universal courses mean I can take a workplace safety course and I can plug it and use it in any of these pathways. This is where we've received the most feedback. What should be universal courses? Meaning I can take it and it will count in any of these pathways. We've taken a lot into consideration. We've shared the list. We're still taking feedback on it if there's something that needs to be in there, but it has to support and enhance that student's skill or craft. There are some courses that were historically used as universal that we're not making a recommendation that they still remain universal. Speech, accounting, and keyboarding. Speech, accounting, and keyboarding. Those are the 3 biggest ones that we've heard. We have also heard new courses that have never been as universal, meaning you can plug them into any pattern for the first. We've heard that they want, the field wants. We've heard world geography. That's the world geography, foreign language in all courses, and study skills for students that are non-special education in some form or fashion. They want to use study skills. And we you know, when we talk with some schools that we talk to, they agree that we want our pathways that are aligned and have these courses, but we also, you know, speech isn't a fit. So that's where we are on universal courses. And the list that you have in front of you is the current list, the list that we shared in the superintendent's newsletter. It's a list where we've gotten feedback from the field. You'll see when we have instances, for example, like keyboarding. We've talked and we've heard from Livingston Parish, and they said we need IBCA, Introduction to Business Computer Applications. So we put that on there. We've heard that we need the medical, so we've included the medical on here. Again, this is a transition year upcoming. So in the fall of 2021, we would start the newest year. The other thing that we're going to circulate around now is we think we're in a pretty good place to share with you a draft of what are you talking about? And show me a health science, show me this pathway. So Jessica's going to pass around and share with you the health science pathway. So what we plan to bring to Betsy for a proposal, you would see as the Jumpstart package. You would see an exec rec. You would see in the board docs, what you will see is, you'll see policy in Bulletin 741 that says freshman cohort can take Jumpstart 1.0 or 2.0. The backup you're going to see is the universal course grid. And then you'll see 11 pathways. This one is in draft form. We plan to have these completely finalized, taking all the feedback that we have them completely finalized next Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe, get them branded through, improved through our communications, and then have them embedded in board docs. So if I'm a high school counselor now, again, we're talking about being streamlined and being efficient. They would have, for the technical pathways, instead of 40 plus, they have 11. We have outlined, if I went straight from high school into the workforce, what would I be eligible for according to Louisiana Star Jobs from workforce? If I go to a 2-year school, technical, what would I be eligible for? And if I go to a 4-year university? And then down at the bottom, those are the credentials. And to what John pointed out this morning is we're not changing anything in accountability, but this tiers the credentials for you and for your counselor to look at. So if I'm in the health science pathway, I got this today, I'd see, like, oh, certified EKG technician, phlebotomy technician, like, those are actually new ones, because as part of this process of designing the 2.0 pathways, it's been flagged for us. There's 2 new ones out there that are being recognized that aren't in the pathways. And then a counselor is there scheduling students in Jumpstart pathways, where as part of the IGP process, it's officially going to occur to the end of the 10th grade year. Counselors will be able to come to a quick 2-page list if the school system is going to adopt the health science pathway. And through a combination of universal courses and the courses in this pathway, the student has his or her 9 credits in a culminating IPC. And I would say this, I'll just close on this and then take questions. And remember, the state board, they approve the framework for the pathways, and then the department, we continually work with the field so that when something arises, and you know, in Superintendent Strong's case, FAA drones came out, and so that wasn't there in 2014. So we came back and we added that and put it in the pathway. And I will say this, for some of those courses, like as an example, a keyboarding, we have put that in the business pathway. We have added keyboarding like in an IT pathway. We're taking that, that's what we plan to do. We've taken foreign language. It's not universal for all pathways, but we are going to take the foreign language And we're gonna, and make sure that it gets put in that law, public safety and corrections pathway. Because we've had them tell us, EMS, Bureau of EMS has told us, our dispatchers, if they can get foreign language, that's great, because we need them to have that. So it will be in pathways, but not a universal across the board.
Any questions? Comments?
So again, in reference to the three credentials being shrunk down,
Streamlined, yeah.
what about a situation where, let's just say a kid in junior high school who's on a welding pathway decides they want to change for one reason or another,
Yeah.
outside of their control. And now there are fewer course options available for that student, which could very well put that student in a situation where they may not graduate on time. I definitely want us to think about all of the worst case scenarios. I know we discuss the big picture perspective in these kind of meetings, but at the district level, it's always unique scenarios
Yes.
on our desk.
So this is, just what I said, is about students transferring a couple of things. I think, for example, you know, let's say I'm in my junior year and I'm in a health science pathway, and I'm working towards phlebotomy or EKG or a dental assistant or a patient care technician. Previously, like, these were separate pathways. Before, you were trying to hop from patient care technician pathway over to an emergency medical responder pathway. And then you had to sync up and see do all these align. And what's occurring now is all of those have been streamlined. So really, it's easier in this pathway to transition because your courses that you were taking for patient care technician are now also allowing to count for you as, you know, paramedic. I mean, we're bringing them all into one space. Same with architecture and construction. So you have a welding pathway, you'll have a carpentry pathway, separate pathways. These are all being folded into one pathway with those courses. So now if you wanted to switch from carpentry to electrical to welding, etc., you've got more ability to actually do that. Now, I do think with the universal courses, and I think what eventually we would see is that most school systems will, with their middle school students, with regular school year, with summer school options now for CTE, this will kind of be where they'll start trending towards offering the universal courses for students, so that if they do transfer from one pathway or one school to another school, they'll have a good solid foundation of universal courses.
So have any of the CTE folks expressed that same type of concern to you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what's the dialogue then as far as the DOE communication?
The dialogue is every email that comes into jumpstart@la.gov is that we receive, and they say, they request, we would like to have keyboarding added as a universal course. Our response is, we have IBCA included as a universal course. However, are there specific pathways where you would like to see keyboarding? And then what we do is we go and we look and we see if that's the appropriate fit for keyboarding. We consult with business and industry, we consult with workforce, we consult with economic development, and we embed them in here. The biggest thing coming from the field, again, is it's mostly about speech, world geography, keyboarding, being universal courses, and foreign language.
I just ask that you consider having some conversations with our CTE folks, because they're communicating with us, the superintendents. And so we don't want the conversation to be one where there's really not any options, not anything we really can make adjustments on. So yeah, I know this is something that a lot of time has been put into, but I think it would be well worth the time to have a little more conversation with CTE supervisors.
Yeah, we will continue having dialogue. And I think, Sheldon, I think also what's important to note is that Jumpstart pathways are dynamic, meaning what we're going to ask the board to approve is the framework, approve the initial one. And then when we have our quarterly Carl Perkins meetings and there's a standing Jumpstart item, getting that feedback. When I talked to Superintendent Milton last week about this, you know, he was saying, look, we need to have, really what you really need on here is you need a 9th grade level course where you can dabble in multiple things. And we said, we agree. And that's the type of thing that we need to work on creating and finding, and when that exists, we agree. We're gonna get that thing added in as soon as we can. So it's that continued dialogue of just informing and keeping the state updated about, hey, what needs to be in here? What needs to be in those pathways as things emerge?
Sheldon, is there a particular course that you or your CT director is concerned with?
Not a particular course, it's just that sometimes situations outside of our control come up. You might have a junior who, for one reason or another, was on one pathway, and then you might need to look at some type of adjustment we need to make. And, when the parent is sitting down with you, the last thing that they want to hear is that my child's not going to be able to graduate. So, I just want us to be as thoughtful as we possibly can be on the front end, because the framework can be restricted to us as district level leaders when we start talking about kids who maybe are placed in these type of unfortunate situations.
I think kind of along those lines, are the courses, the biggest things I get from my staff, the courses for each of these pathways lined out, are they clarified yet? I think if you could see those, you could see how that transition would take place later on the following.
Yeah. So what we did was at the Jumpstart Convention, we shared everything we had heard about. We put it on the slide. We outlined. We listed the technology courses, like as an example, we were doing ideas that continue giving us feedback, and we're still continuing to get the feedback. And our vision is to continue as we sit here today and keep dialoguing, is to take the most thorough, up-to-date package, probably by next Tuesday, to get it proofed, get it branded, and then get it uploaded in board docs somewhere in the window of probably next Friday to the Monday, a week from Friday to Monday, and get that updated and published.
Just the sooner we see it, the better, just in terms of staffing, in terms of helping our counselors make those.
Yes.
So we can start planning if somebody changes. All right, what would work, we'd like to have that on the front end.
Yep.
And dealing with the kids, you know what I mean? So we can have some ideas of where to send them.
And I first want to say, there's been a tremendous amount of work that your staff has put in and really worked a lot with the LCTCS staff, with Perkins rollout, and trying to make all these mesh. And I think it's been tremendous. I like to see, these streamlined pathways, very, very good, Ken. Y'all have done a great job. I think what's happening with our CTE people, they haven't seen a full-blown rollout of what this looks like. I'm looking at the health sciences pathway for the first time. I don't know if they have seen it in its detail or entirety. And that creates some apprehension among the people who are having to implement this in the field. So the sooner we can get that to them, the better. The scheduling and staffing issue, I think we're addressing hopefully with this transition initiative for next year. Right. The universal courses, I still think somewhat of a problem. And I think the problem comes, and Shelton was alluding to it, when kids make decisions to change. We're dealing with 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. We're not dealing with adults. How many people go to college and change their major 3 or 4 times? How many people graduate from college and go into career endeavor that they weren't even trained for initially? So we're dealing with teenagers and their families who are making major decisions here at very young ages in what they think they want to do. The universal courses, I'm concerned with kids, for example, who were still in their 9th and 10th grade years. I'm going to a 4-year university, I'm in a top university pathway. So I'm taking all of the, quote, traditional college prep courses, maybe as much as a year, somewhat. And then maybe ACT hits some, or reality hits, and now maybe I want to look at something else, that I want to pursue one of these jumpstart pathways, and I've got to amass then 9 courses in it. I can do what I need to get my IBC, but I've still got to get these 9 courses. Maybe I've taken my 2 years of foreign language, but they don't count in every pathway. To me, I would like to look at some universal courses that could span both of these endeavors, so that a student is going to change, say, from a TOPS university. I know you say maybe world geography isn't germane to this per se. And I know we have biology and, we have some different ones, but I'm not sure. But obviously, nothing on these back lists are universal to every one of these 11 pathways. So when we're looking at some maybe more academic courses that could be put and considered in each of these pathways, we might give some kids and their families opportunities to make some adjustments in their scheduling and not delay graduation. And I think that's a real concern if we can look at something that might span, a few things that might span across.
Yep, I agree. I think the pathways in the universal list needs to be as dynamic and fluid and adapt as we can. I would say a couple things. We heard some of this with Jumpstart 1.0. It was a concern. And the board approved 2 policies which really started helping school systems. Number one was, it used to be in middle school, there was a very restricted list of courses that could be offered in middle school for high school credit. The board removed that policy and said, with the exception of physical education 1, which is in statute that you can't take that until you get to the high school campus, anything can be offered in middle school. The other thing is, the board removed the summer school requirement. There used to be a summer school requirement capped at 2 courses for repeat credit. That was removed, so school systems can now offer year-round, like CTE, in summer school. And some of those were policies were being provided to provide that school system that flexibility to do that. And then we're cognizant of what you're saying, right? So like when we're designing these, we are looking for those type of courses that can cross over. And so as you pointed out, in this pathway, we have a biology, we have chemistry, we have foreign language, we have advanced placement psychology. Those are all TOPS university courses, but they can also be used in the sequence of 9 here. And again, we are open. If there are other courses that we're missing that should be on either one of these, send them to jumpstart@la.gov even before and after.
I guess what I'm asking you is, we have kids moving from Texas, Mississippi, all over the country, and they're coming in at different times in their careers and trying to fit them into some of this. If we could have a couple of more academic courses that were universal for all pathways, not just fitting them into this one or that one or the other, like the 2 years of foreign language, to me, that would seem to fit with everything, because we're in a more global society.
I think
shouldn't it maybe?
I think the tension is, and I agree, I understand the problem that both Doris and Sheldon are voicing. I think the problem is we hear a second side of this from industry. I was talking with a large hospital manager in Southfield, actually, all the way in. And they were saying, how is it that a young person can graduate in a health pathway from Louisiana high schools and not even have a CNA? Like, how is that possible? And they were angry with me. And when you look through transcripts of many kids who are taking health pathways, they are loaded up with universal courses. And that's not touching on the problem that, right, like Sheldon and Doris are describing. These are kids who have been on that pathway from the time they were sophomores and juniors in high school. So I think what you're hearing from us is trying to create incentives for as many courses as possible that students take to get their Jumpstart credential to be relevant to that specific Jumpstart credential. And I don't want to create a solution for a relatively small number of kids, the out-of-state transfers, for example, that has the effect of diluting the industry relevance for all of the kids in pathways. However, I do hear you loud and clear that for the small number of kids who make a choice, say at the end of the junior year, who are transferring in, say at the start of the senior year, there does need to be an answer. I think we can put our heads together and talk how we manage that through, because I agree with you that we've never really overtly answered that question together. I also agree with Doris, your point about just getting out the pathways. I think that lack of concreteness is the thing that's creating some uncertainty, and when there's uncertainty, there's anxiety. So we will do that. We will step on the gas on that. And second, I think maybe we want to pull together and have a discussion about what do we do with kids who are late transfers or late changers, because I completely understand the problem.
Right, and John, with business and industry, they're going to get these are required IBCs, so
Yeah.
whatever is necessary to attain the IBC,
Yeah.
the proficiency exam or any type of technical certificate which requires these sports pathways, they would have had to already meet. It's just a few of the other ones that they may not have gotten a full knowledge.
Yes, you're right.
But maybe 6 of them were really focused on this, and they don't have time to go and pick, you know, or state field or something that's on this, or the school can't offer it.
Right, yeah, no, yeah. And I certainly understand that in small districts, this has a particular, small schools, this has a particular impact, because your ability to turnkey new courses is just not there.
So y'all can look at some of these maybe.
Yeah, I think,
Universal academic.
yeah, or some way of thinking about how do you deal with the situation you're describing, which is, we understand you have programs, you have courses of study for kids who are choosing their jumpstart pathway, say, in their sophomore year. But if you have late enters or late switchers, you know, we don't want to prevent that student from graduating just because they weren't on the bus at the original time. So I think we maybe can put together a way of solving that problem on a kid-by-kid basis or something like that, because I do agree it's an issue. Let's not.
I have a question for you. Ken, you mentioned study skills for regular ed. Is that we're not going to offer that? The jump start for special education work?
No, students with an IEP that have study skills, those courses count for the jump start pathway. But there was a request for a just study skills course, study skills for non-special ed students to count as a universal course.
The study skills for special ed with an IEP.
Those count towards the bank of 9 credits. Yes, sir.
I got
Yes, sir.
I really am in total agreement with streamlining and help more understanding, more manageable, and I appreciate the work that you and your staff have all done that. I'm just wondering, with all the questions that has arisen relative to the universal courses and getting this off the ground, it's 4 months, 3 months, 5 months, they're only, we're going to implement.
The early adopters, yeah, that choose to do the 2.0s next year. Yes. You'll still have the old ones available for another year to use too.
Are we moving too fast?
I don't think so. I mean, I think what we've,
That concern was raised after
Yeah.
the convention, and I think we agree with it. We were going to do that.
yes,
So originally, the requirement was going to start with the class that enters high school in the fall of this year, meaning the graduating class of 2024. After hearing the feedback at the convention, we bumped that back, so the requirement would kick in the fall of 2021 with 9th graders, or the class of 2025.
yes. So I don't think that's as much of an issue now with the transition here. And I think also what's important is that the department, as we work on our super summer institutes, where we take our Perkins funding and that we retain here in the department, we provide that teacher training, is to really find out what are those courses that the school systems need additional training on. They may even be new, so it can open up to universal courses. So you would see in the summer of 2020, in the summer of 2021, at these super summer institutes with the Department of CTE training, we will be providing training around these bucket of universal courses, and any other ones they could put in this here. So you have 2 other summer opportunities to get teachers reskilled, upskilled, et cetera, before this full grid goes into effect.
So Keith, just one clarification. The Jumpstart Institute that we just had, our CTE supervisors, whatever, they didn't have this information that.
No, we're still in feedback mode, trying to get everything in.
That's the reason, yeah, and that's the reason that I talked with Angela Crumpton and Vicki Merritt, and just to kind of see where we were in Washita. And because I'm getting more information now than they were able to give me even coming down here. And that's where to me, that is where a lot of the questions may be coming from, is our folks that hadn't seen this before we're just now seeing.
Yeah, I think to John's point, we'll step on the gas pedal, even if we start releasing these even if we release these in waves. So if we get this and 2 others, we'll release, and then when we get the next 4, we'll release in ways to get them out there as soon as possible. But I do just want to keep remembering, these are, yeah, those, yeah.
So each pathway will have something very similar to what.
All 11, there'll be 11.
Health science is going to be. And I agree also with what Darcy was saying, the fact that the universal courses was a huge concern for, not taking them away, but possibly adding more into it just for scheduling purposes and being able to offer at our schools what our students would need.
I want to clarify, and I want to make sure that I go back and give the right information. So an incoming freshman in 2021 could in fact enroll in Jumpstart 1.0, including all of the current universal courses through their senior year?
2020, 2021, yes, this fall.
Or some variants of that, correct?
They can pick a 1.0 pathway, a 2.0 pathway, either one will be available to school systems.
Through their senior year for graduation?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Is it possible on some of this, what they're saying, to form some type of committee at y'all's level that can handle these extenuating circumstances on these kids as far as graduation goes?
Yeah, I think so.
An appeals committee or anything like the hardship committee? Because everybody, the smaller districts are going to have a hard time with some of this. Even though it's streamlined, it's just, we're out of staff and we've got staff teaching 2 or 3 different things.
We understand the concern. I think we need to put our heads together. It's not something where I think we should try to provide a universal solution for a very specific set of kids, but I do think we need a solution for those specific set of kids. We understand the concern. And I think a process of some kind that doesn't create a bunch of red tape could help resolve the issue without just creating a set of universal courses that aren't totally applicable in each context. So why don't we put our heads together and come back to it?
I agree. Any other questions? Any opposition? Oh, okay.
So the goal today is to ask this committee for approval to move forward with the presentation to Bessie. Is that what the purpose of this?
Well, you choose whether you're just receiving items and so we can get feedback, or whether you approve or reject a proposal as well. There's 3 things that are happening here. First, there's the general approval of the names of the pathways. That's really what Bessie is doing. Bessie does not get into all of the individual things on all of these sheets of paper. And second, I think there's also the question of trying to create a fix for the procedural fix here. So we don't typically come to you seeking your approval. That's at your discretion. As will be a rejection. We're simply asking you to review and receive.
Any other questions? Is there any opposition to receive? Okay. All right, our next item to consider is updates to the Taylor Opportunity Program for students, weighted grade point average, matrix regarding AP psychology. Motion to receive. Thank you, Wes. Second.
I think this is really straightforward and really simple. There is current statute that provides if Bessie and the Board of Regents approve a set of TOPS aligned dual enrollment, advanced placement, IB, gifted and talented, or honors courses, those courses generate a 5-point weight for the consideration of TOPS. And we have brought forward that grid. We usually do that in December or in June. Late into the game for counting for TOPS social studies is advanced placement psychology. The board approved this to count as a 4th social studies, but what has not occurred yet is this has not been brought forward to both the board and Board of Regents to get the 5-point weight for TOPS GPA. So we have high school students right now that are taking advanced placement psychology, and it's only on a 4-point scale, not a 5-point scale. So this is going to go to the board with a recommendation to add this to the 5-point weighted GPA scale, and subsequently we will also bring this same item to the Board of Regents, so then we'll have Regents investing recognition. We can send it over to the law.
And question? No questions? Is there any opposition? Move to our last item, consideration of an update report regarding the proposed 2021 executive budget. Can I get a motion to receive?
Thank you. As you all have been following this, I'm sure through the media, but let me just detail what has happened. 10 days ago, the governor introduced his executive budget. As you know, that's the first step in the budget formation process. We're a very long ways, as Representative Fairfellow can tell you, from any completion. I am personally grateful that the governor has included $65 million more in the MFP. We can discuss the specifics of that, but it's glad that he took that step. The governor also made moves to try to continue to shore up higher education and make additional general fund investment in higher education. And the governor took the step of investing $25 million in general fund into early childhood education as well. To talk about some of the specifics of that. First, within the MFP, as you know, what's been proposed is a 1.375% increase to the base per pupil, which comes out to slightly less than $40 million. The rest of the growth, as we'll talk about within at the meeting later today, is roughly $26 million in anticipated formula-driven growth. That's somewhat driven by a modest anticipated uptick in the number of students, which bucks a recent trend, but more significant increases in the career development fund weight and in the special education weight. There are more students with IEPs now than there have been before. There are more students, period, and there are many more students taking Jumpstart courses that generate additional weight within level 4 of the formula. It's projected that those costs will drive up the formula by $26 million. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of discussion about this. I have not talked to our board about their general direction. I know they're going to be looking at the task force today. The task force is just going to be reviewing this. I'm assuming they will make a motion, and I think in all likelihood that motion will speculate on not just what's been proposed, but also on what would happen if there were additional revenue that the legislature realized. Would they appropriate it toward the MFP and try to increase upon what the MFP has generated? I also recognize there'll be a lot of discussions about pay increases in the MFP. The formula that's been, or the budget that's been proposed does not mention anything about pay raises, but I do wish to emphasize it's entirely within Bessie's discretion to create a formula and to stipulate the cost that formula goes to. In other words, the executive budget does not determine what's in the MFP. The Bessie determines what's in the MFP, and the legislature may choose to accept or to reject the formula that Bessie has developed. So today's meeting later today is advisory. Bessie will be taking this up at its meeting in 2 weeks, and will, under the Constitution, must approve the formula at that time. I believe that's probably the sum total of the financial circumstances. I do want to note just 2 more things that may be a little bit hidden within all of this. First is that there is money for dual enrollment, kind of very quietly mentioned within the higher education dimension of the budget. And it's $5.5 million, largely for teacher professional development and pilot programming. There's no specifics as to what the pilot program would entail. But that does mean additional money for dual enrollment. Although it is to the Board of Regents, and it is for targeted programming that has yet to be defined. And I know Mike, for example, sat on the dual enrollment task force. They had a final meeting yesterday. I think that process is going very well, and I appreciate your service there as well. Secondly, I mentioned earlier the rural issue. I want to be just very clear that from my perspective, the state does need to make an investment on an urgent basis to shore up the finances of districts that have experienced significant population decline in recent years. I just don't see any way around that. However, I do believe the legislature should also consider how is it that in the end, this is not simply a financial solution, but also a structural solution? How do we look at cost savings in small and shrinking communities and school systems, not simply appropriating additional dollars alone as a solution? And so I hope that this will be a dialogue at our 11 o'clock meeting. That is not mentioned in the budget now, but there's obviously a long ways to go with Bessie, with the legislature, and it could come up through that process this year as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions, comments? Okay. We've got a public comment. Mr. Keith Corbett.
Do I need the mic or?
Oh, yeah, man.
Can I use my teacher voice still? Much better, right? Hey, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Keith Corbett, Executive Director of the Associated Professional Educators, Louisiana. You probably know us as an insurance company for teachers or a professional development and services company for districts. We do have a third component that I thought was pertinent to mention today. We are actually a 501c3. We have a charitable foundation, and we make a number of donations to districts across the state. In fact, a number of you here today, we just finished a 26-school donation in Iberia Parish. We just arranged a donation in Grant Parish for all their schools, etc. And the bottom line is that that foundation has done very, very well with Stockholm in the last year. So if we have not given money to your district, to district schools in your district, please come by me, please come see me. Whether your district is a small district or a large district, we have the capacity to give. And of course, the last thing we want is the IRS thinking we're not charitable enough and coming after our dividends. So y'all have a great day. Looking forward to more discussion today.
Thank you very much. There you go, yeah. Lobby.
Any opposed to the motion?
No, we didn't. Is there any opposition to the last item? Executive budget. Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, can I take a moment question?
You bet.
Members, I wanted to note this. This is my final Superintendent's Advisory Council. I've been coming to this meeting for 9 years. When I first came to this meeting, Steve was here, Trey was here. I don't know if Sheldon was here, but he was a superintendent. I don't think anybody else around the room was in the superintendent's chair. I certainly met many of you as assistant superintendents or school leaders or at ABC, David, or where have you. But I wanted you to know that my wife and I are staying in Louisiana. We have a daughter who's a native Louisiana. I've got another kid on the way who's going to be a native Louisiana. I wanted you to know that a lot of the reason that we made that decision, as I was sharing with a couple of you earlier, is that we've been so welcomed into the communities of this state. Anytime I asked to be invited, or anytime you invited me, I always felt like you were treating me as if I was a Louisianan who was from here and trying to do the right thing for your kids. And whether we always agreed on every issue or not, I never felt like we weren't on a level. And that was true in public settings, but even more than that, it was true in private, where so many of you have done things to advise me and to make me better at my job. And I hope you feel like I've tried. Because I know you're trying. I know you're trying very, very hard. I know the teachers of this state and the principals and the district office folks are trying very, very hard. And no one should ever question the commitment to doing what's right of the people who are care for and educate the children of this great state. I'm very proud to have been a part of it for the last 9 years, and I look forward to working with you in other capacities. If you ever need someone to come here and agitate on your behalf, I'm right down the road. Thank you very much. See you later. Good job.
Where's the agenda? I hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, stand up.
And then